I'm Louis Moroni, and this is Constraints the Podcast from Hi-Fi Handiwork, a 20-episode series. Each episode is a chat with a guest from a creative industry about a project obstacle they've experienced, viewed through the lens of project management's three constraints of scope, time, and budget. Further insights and commentary can be found in the show notes. We hope you enjoy the program. While there are many and varied creative industries, there are also many paths one can take within any given creative industry. In music, you can play, write, produce, market, or edit, among other things. In film, add the design and creation of props, sets, and costumes, among other things. There are varied approaches to how you can engage with creative industries. You can get published by a national publishing company or by an independent niche house, or like I did, you could self-publish. As an architect, you can join a large architecture firm and contribute to the design and construction of massive structures. You can work for yourself and design houses in the private sector, or work for the government supporting the development of public housing, hospitals, and other public infrastructure. What I'm saying is that the ways people engage with creative industries is as varied as the people that do the engaging. And, like in any profession, being content means not only finding the sector you're most interested in, but also the contribution you want to make. Well, today's guest has a marked and clear path for her contribution to fashion. From graduating from Parsons School of Design in New York, she went on to take incrementally higher lead design roles at international fashion houses, starting with Dolce & Gabbana and moving through Abercrombie & Fitch, American Eagle Outfitters, Woolrich Italy, Canada Goose, and Roots. With such a focused and successful use of her skills and talent, I'm sure today's episode will be influenced by her design direction, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final product. Karuna Scheinfeld, welcome to Constraints.
Thanks, Louis. Glad to be here.
Okay, great. I'm taking off my glasses. Welcome again. You're here. You're ready to talk about some project obstacle, so I'm just going to let you jump right in.
Yeah. So I am at a crossroads right now, and I think we're all living in a time of significant change. And part of my reaction to that change is to take control of my life in creating my own chaos rather than being victim to the chaos around me. But what that means is that I'm leaving a fantastic job here in Canada and am moving back to volatile New York next year and starting to work on my own small company that is tiny and doesn't pay anything. So this is a moment where I'm about to embark on a completely new journey that is full of risk.
This is very exciting. So just back up a little bit, just to clarify, what are the changes you're talking about in the world?
In the world. I mean, I think after COVID, we've seen essentially the rise of fascism all over the world. We've seen a complete digital transformation of our culture. And none of us really know what the future brings. We're looking at climate change. We're looking at incredible innovation. We're looking at like the best and the worst of our species all at the same time. And although I do wonder often, does everyone feel this way in any given moment? It feels like a nexus of history right now that is unprecedented.
And it's your reality.
That's right.
And these are the environmental factors you're dealing with. So I'm going to use a little project management jargon. So, okay. So now you've set the stage here. Let's talk about the different constraints, and let's just go through them because this is a new venture, like you said. So you're actually going to need to really think through each of these constraints. And in my life, in my world, there's only three constraints. And you can sort of, like any other constraint, you can kind of roll up into one of scope, budget, and time. So let's start with scope. What's your project? What are you doing?
So the project is called Four Objects is the name of the company. And this idea was really a passion project, an experiment that I started with my best friend of 30 years. We started conceptualizing it in like maybe 2018 and then started the website in 2020. And really we're just kind of like, let's just throw this out into the world and see what happens. And it's grown organically, but with growth creates more opportunity. It creates more financial requirements and resource requirements. And so it just hit a point where I was like, either I have to do this and do it for real, or I need to kill it. And I didn't want to kill my beautiful experimental child. So
Oh, that's nice. So I imagine this was your secret hope. Not maybe not secret hope, but this was your hope that it would turn into something that would eventually require you to embrace it.
yeah, I yes and no. I really have been extremely careful this whole time to approach it with total openness. And what I mean by that is that I had to start by removing the fear of failure. I don't a lot of people are like, "Oh, what is failure?" Let's not be afraid of failure, but ultimately when you try to make something and it doesn't work, that is failure. It's okay. Let's call it failure. And I the first thing I had to confront was all of like my fear around that. And so I really wanted to be engaged in this project in a way where I thought of it more as a natural thing that I was creating that would have a lifespan. And I didn't know if that lifespan would be 6 months or 20 years.
So what is the fear? What
Oh, I'm
what are you
afraid that
afraid
like
of?
I try to do something that's very personal and meaningful to me and the world rejects it and for whatever reason, it's not
Mhm.
rational in the sense that I work in an industry that has probably the highest failure rate second only to restaurants, like it's like the odds are we will fail as a business. However, I've built this professional career in this industry. So to create something that's purely mine and not be behind the mask of a corporate job and have that thing
Mhm.
not survive, that's scary.
Right. I mean, I'm not here to make you feel better, but just because it's not successful doesn't mean the world's rejected it. It might just be a circumstance of time, circumstance of um, how you've marketed yourself. I mean, it's interesting because you're saying you kind of let it go and evolve as it would. Did you actively try to push it into the world, or did you just sort of like put it out there and hopefully someone
Well,
would
these
see
have
it
been the
passing by?
steps. So it's an e-commerce brand, and so we had to talk about it, right? Um, at first, I wanted to put it. We put it out into the world in passively and then actively. But the first step to me is that I actually don't want to make things that other people don't want. So the first opportunity for failure, and again, not a pejorative like use of the word, the first
Mhm.
opportunity is I'm going to put something out there. Am I getting an energy back? Are
Right.
people responding? Are they excited? Are they inspired? Are they loving it? Are they keeping it? Are they taking care of it? I don't really want to make things that people don't love.
Can I ask you a question? In your experience so far in the industry, do things still succeed if people
Yes,
don't love them?
absolutely.
Would you know whether or not your success was coming from people loving what you did versus not?
I don't know if you ever know that definitively, but you get a lot of feedback, whether that's
Mhm.
through social or like as I was coming up, one of the things that was a really defining kind of moment of awareness for me was that it was really exciting to see my work in magazines, especially magazines that I revered, or to meet an editor and have them like love something. But that was actually less meaningful to me than coming into contact with somebody who told me that the thing I had made was their favorite thing. And they are like terrified of it falling apart and they've repaired it and they love it. And can I make another one? And why can't they get another one? So I realized something about myself in that moment, and that changed the way I approached my career because the allure of fashion is strong, but it really is about image and a lot of superficial things that aren't meaningful to me. The people who love fashion, like fashion, they will die for that recognition. And I don't care that much. I care more about creating things that other people care about and that have touched their lives. And I just happen to love making clothes, so those are the things I make.
So let's talk a bit
Yeah.
more about four then. What is
So
it?
4 is a reaction in a lot of ways to 25 years of being in the fashion industry and getting a lot of clarity around what I want to make and don't want to make. So the first thing is that I wanted to make fewer things. So the name four came from the idea of making only four things a year. And what that meant, so that's a constraint we created. And it's named after a constraint, actually. And
Hmm.
what that meant is that we could obsess over those four items every year. We could make them the way they should be made from a human perspective, an ecological perspective, a quality perspective. And the second constraint was that I didn't want to make a new collection every year. So we were planning to build four items a year for 4 years, complete a collection, and then actually continue making those 16 items indefinitely. And those items only change because we find a better way to make them, we improve them, or nobody wants them. And we slowly retire those items and then think of what the thing that's needed is. But just like we're talking about my normal work life, we're talking about thousands of styles a year. So to make four
Hmm.
things creates a kind of opportunity and pressure that is really interesting and intriguing to me, and I wanted to meet that challenge.
So this is really interesting to me as well. So the in the world where you're making thousands thousands of
Yes.
different
Yes.
items, each of those items would have uh, a X
Mhm.
amount of people purchasing them. Do you have any sense of how many people you want purchasing your items compared to what the
Yeah.
thousands of
Yeah.
items that get
S-
out there
uh,
get purchased by? That wasn't a full sentence, but I'll
I
stop
think
talking now.
there's
Go ahead.
two answers to that from two different perspectives. One way of answering that is um, I want as many people as will keep and cherish the item to buy the item. So that's one perspective. The other perspective is I want as many people as I need to stay in business to buy the item.
Okay. What if your items became just extremely fashionable and
Mhm.
popular, and you know that people aren't buying them to love and cherish them, but because they are popular?
I think that's not going to happen, and let me tell you why. I mean,
Okay.
it's funny because it's kind of the dream of every designer, right? Like you get Gwyneth Paltrow wears or Oprah wears or whatever, and then thousands of people find you, and you're a hit. But that's also like the peak and valley of destruction. Um, so number one, our clothes aren't cheap. If you look at how much you spend if you buy four things a year versus 25 things that you end up throwing out, it's actually not that much more expensive. But it's going to take a while for people to get there. I get it. So there's going to be a self selection. We also sell Forewarn, which is our resale platform. So anything that has a slight defect or that's been washed or that was returned, we sell at. That's the only time we discount our product. So we have that plus payment plans. We have a way for people to enter at any price point, but the price alone will edit out people who don't really want it.
Is the idea that first of all, what are these four items? Would they
Yeah,
make
yeah.
up an
So
outfit?
I mean,
So like shirt,
well,
pants,
it's
socks,
16.
underwear.
It's 16.
Oh,
That's
right,
right.
right. Over the
And
4 years, right?
uh, the first one that we crowdfunded the brand with is called the Rabbit Jacket. And completely selfishly, the Rabbit Jacket was an amazing excuse to work with this weaver in upstate New York whose name is Rabbit. She's in her 80s. She's incredible. She has a rat tail. She's like everything I want to be in my 80s. And I had just been for years looking for a reason to work with her. So we designed a fabric in like the most laborious and kind of blissfully luxuriously slow way that she custom weaves for us upstate very slowly. And then we cut and sew it in New York into like a Japanese inspired work jacket essentially. But that was the first thing we made, and it's really a piece that you can keep for your whole life. Like it was, and part of the Japanese work jacket is that these garments, henten jackets, are traditionally patched and repaired. And so you have ones that are thousands of years old in these hand-dyed indigo fabrics that are in museums that people cherish, that people on the resale market pay $15,000 for. There's this deep tradition of this silhouette not only going back thousands of years, but in that kind of repair mentality. So
Hmm.
that was what we started with. And then the next item was a shirt, which is a work shirt, and it comes in 3 fabrics. It was really inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe and the way she built her wardrobe. But it's something you wear day in, day out. A lot of our customers buy like 6 different versions of it. And that was a bit more accessible, right? A bit more accessible from a price, but even just like wearing it, wearing occasion. Then we moved on to a t-shirt, then a sweater, then pants, then, so we've been very carefully creating a collection. It's not like, some brands make a capsule wardrobe that's like all black and white and minimalist and you wear it to work. It's not minimalist. It's just highly focused and intentional.
And they work
Yeah,
together.
for sure.
Do you imagine people wearing just
I
that?
don't think so. We've never.
Like, can you go to a
Yeah.
dinner
I mean, you
party and
could. And I
you could, sure,
my
yeah. I
partner
mean, why not?
May Fado and I experiment with this because we have, I have like my size of a thing, and then I have this like size that's 4 times too big that I wear differently. She does the same. Like we try it out in all these different ways because that's part of the luxury of the slowness of what we're doing. So
Hmm.
I do wear them quite a lot, and I have multiples of everything. But I think even in the brand concept, we never want it to be exclusive. We don't expect this kind of exclusivity from our customer. Not only is it realistic, but we don't really want that. We expect everything we're making to also not only fit into somebody's existing wardrobe, but work with something that you bought from the thrift shop or that you bought from, the row.
Right. But at the same time, I imagine that the mentality that comes with the brand that you're creating might encourage people to also, I mean, you said it earlier, cherish the wardrobe and find different and innovative ways that they can use
Yes,
them.
and what we created as part of the brand, and this took a minute to kind of form. We created this concept that we call collectors, and part of this was in response to the constraint of inventory creation. Like one of the reasons fashion brands fail so much is because you have to pay for and create a physical object before you sell it. A lot of brands will pre-sell stuff or crowdfund stuff, but really if you're going to build a real brand, like you can only do that so much. So we were trying to figure out, okay, how do we not overproduce? How do we meet demand? How do we produce the right size range so we don't end up with a bunch of size 5s and no size 2s, and that's all that people want. And so we started this thing called collectors, where you basically subscribe to like the concept, and we send you a new item every 3 months, and we choose it for you based on what we have in inventory, where you live, what the season is, and you build your collection with us, and you can return it anytime you want to. You don't have to keep it. Like you keep the pieces you want. We have a 6-month return policy so people can actually we encourage you to try the pieces, wear them. And so some of our collectors have kept every single piece, and other ones have kept some, and some very few have kept none. Uh, but our system allows for that.
And you have
Yeah, just
non-collectors who just
exactly.
want to buy it. And then is there, you would have an inventory for that, or basically people order something and you don't
I no,
make
I
on
just did
demand?
it in like a very dumb and simple way. I was like, okay, so we have, let's say, we have 350 collectors. So I'm gonna make basically 500 pieces. 350 of them I'm going to do based on the size of our collector membership. And then the rest I'm going to make based on like the average size runs that we sell. And so, maybe a third or 2/3 of our inventory will be kind of spoken for. Um, but it really de-risks the situation so that we don't get stuck in like a completely imbalanced inventory situation.
Okay, so then, and I want to talk about money and time soon, but the one last thing here. You said earlier that you want people to love and cherish, but then you also need to sell enough to keep your
Yeah.
business going. Do you cap out your inventory? Do you have a number of, like, okay, we don't need to sell any more than this to maintain a certain level of um, comfort in our business. So and I guess that would add a little bit of
I
exclusivity.
would
But
actually never do that. I ideally I want to have everything in stock all the time. There are a few exceptions to that, which I'll explain, um, but I don't want to overproduce. So I also am fine with this company becoming as big as like the people want it to be. So the size of the company to me should meet the demand and interest from people in the world rather than like forcing it down their throats or having the pressure of trying to create something that, was desperately trying to figure out what people want over and over and over again. So that may be such a small company that it can't survive. And then the life cycle of this project ends. Or it could become a $10 million company and we have just enough, we figure out how to make just enough profit to like pay our bills, feed our kids. That's really enough for me, for both of us. Or it becomes
hmm
bigger and we address that, which in a way is harder.
well, yeah, I'm imagining. We're
Yeah.
talking vision. You have this vision. I mean, if you got large enough that you're now employing a fair number of people, you're entrenched in, I guess, the system that also produces
Yeah.
the fast fashion and the thousands of items a year, or the different items a year. Uh, I imagine it'd be very challenging if demand starts to go down for you to sort of just ride that rather than, this structure now, or this that you have created to instinctively want to, push, do something, what's do what's do
Right.
what's usually done in order to sell enough to keep the structure
I
the
mean, this
size it
is
is.
this is like the new frontier of conscious capitalism. Like what does a new model look like? And is it a model that can survive and thrive, create economic um, strength, but be different?
Yeah, it's really
Um,
interesting. Would you move from
yes.
clothing
So
if
let
the
me tell you the fantasy. Let me tell you the full fantasy.
All right,
Okay.
let me hear it. I'm going to lean back. You might hear my
We'll
chair.
be done with the apparel collection by 2026 or so. It takes longer than 4 years. Let me put it that way, because we're slow and we're parents and we I've had this other job this whole time and everything. Um, but after we finish apparel, we want to kind of start carving out different parts of your life with exactly the same intentionality. So that might be accessories, that might be kitchen tools, that might be soft home goods, your sheets, your towels. Like May and I are nothing if not opinionated about the things that we use in our lives, and we're very different. And our intersection is where beauty and value and utility is really optimized, let's say. So I'm very dissatisfied with my bathroom towels, and I have a lot of ideas about the right bathroom towel. So, if I spend the next 20 years of my life sourcing things like the best knife, the best bathroom towel, and fighting with my best friend about who is my partner about what it is and how to make it, that sounds like bliss to me. And if we can make that work
Yeah,
and
that
make it
sounds pretty
profitable
pretty nice.
enough, that
hmm
is like a resounding success in my book.
Will it still be just, four things? Will it be a knife, uh, I don't know, a sharpener,
Yeah, I
julienne,
mean,
or I don't know,
that's
but
what we're
still four
debating. The
things.
loophole here is like four things for how many? Four things a year? Absolutely, but for how many years, right? So like, is the kitchen, if the apparel collection's 4 years, is the kitchen collection 4 years too, or is it 16? Like, we're going to be fighting and debating about this, and soon we're
hmm
going to be involving our collectors in the discussion as well, so that we start to really mine like this incredible group of women who are purchasing our products. Sometimes I'll see somebody come for the first time and buy a bunch of stuff, and I'm kind of curious about who she is, and I'm like, oh, she's the chair of diversity studies at Stanford, or oh, she's like a surgeon who's doing incredible pro bono work all over the world. Like, these women are incredible women. So I'm also really excited to kind of leave our isolation in this design work and get more involved with our community. And I don't believe in design by committee. I don't think it's about that, but to listen and hear about people who care about what they're purchasing, about what they love and what they dream about, and the thing that they can't find but they've been looking for because they found it 20 years ago and then it wore out. Those conversations are fascinating. Absolutely.
Inspirational. Now, you said women. Is that just because that's who typically is that your market, or is that your
Yeah,
current market?
we feel really conflicted about this. We talk about it because neither of us feel particularly attached to the idea of defining this at all.
Yeah, because to be honest, I've really been
I mean,
kind
you
of
look great
interested
in our
in the
shirt.
shirt.
Absolutely. Yeah. And
You
you
think
could
so?
wear a dress and
Okay.
I would support that.
And I have, and I typically do look
I
good
believe
in
it.
women's fashion.
But so yeah, we have male customers for sure, but the vast majority of our customers are women. We also are still in a time where women need to be focused, highlighted, supported. Part of the way we design the product is a very real reaction to the ridiculous design that goes into some women's apparel that just drives me crazy. It's like the number of times I've been in a room where like people are making fake pockets on women's garments. And I have an extreme, like a no tolerance policy for that type of design.
Like no features
Functional.
that are
Well, and it's
misrepresenting
even worse.
what
They'll
they are.
make like a welt pocket in the back of a pant and it'll look like a real pocket. And sometimes it's just a
Yeah.
fake detail. And like, I won't ever make that, but I'm like, whatever. Okay, people make it. Don't be so judgy. But what really pisses me off is when they make a little pocket bag, but it's only like an inch deep. And the whole reason people do this is because women don't like their butts to look big. So, like, don't put more fabric in there. I mean, it's the most
Right.
ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Just, you know what? If that's really how you feel about it and that's how she feels about it, just don't put a pocket on there. That's fine, right?
Right. Yeah. Or don't. I guess. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that a pocket shape
Makes your butt
mean
look big? I
or makes
mean,
your butt look.
maybe. But if that's what
But
you're dealing
I
with, like, good luck. I'm so insulted by that type of behavior in the industry. And there's a lot of talk of that about that in women's, especially in outdoor, where you have women who are less maybe like the body conscious situation is like a little bit diffused than like a traditional fashion brand. But you'll find like an incredible amount of utility in everything we make. And we just try to create a really beautiful, perfect fit so that it looks great on everybody. We fit our garments on like a huge variety of sizes and types of bodies, which is unusual. Most fashion companies, you have a fit model, you fit one size, and then even if you're selling 12 sizes, you do it with a mathematical pattern grade. So we've created all these really difficult parts of our process, but that's why we make so few things, is so we have the luxury of doing the things the way that they should be done. And I just am kind of counting on the fact that that creates something better and that people will love it.
Well, what I like about this is this scope that you've created, and we're not going to get into. I mean, we've talked a bit about time and budget. I mean, they're all intertwined, but really, this is about the scope. It sounds to me, and I am not a expert in fashion, but it sounds to me like you're a vanguard. You're pioneering an approach to fashion that, if it resonates with people, is a better way to approach clothing. Um, and you haven't paid me to say that, but um, so it's kind
Yeah.
of it's very exciting, and it sounds like you've already had some success. I mean, you're
Yeah.
embracing your baby, so I hope that it continues to grow and um, and do
Thank you.
wonderful things. I have one thing I've been forgetting to ask people. This is supposed to be a question I ask at the end of every podcast, and so I haven't done it the last couple times. If you could, and I'm sorry to spring this on you, if you could finish this sentence: creativity is.
Creativity is the process of bringing something into being that needs to exist. that's how I feel when I'm making something, if I'm doing it right.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks again for joining me, and that's it.
Thank you,
That's the
Lewis.
end of it. Thank you. Okay. I didn't ask. I mean, I'll put. I'm assuming you'll want me to. I mean, maybe you don't. Once we post this, I'll put the
Yeah,
for
totally.
website. And I didn't ask
So
you within the context of the podcast. Do you want to just tell people where they can
sure,
find
sure.
for?
So if you're interested in four objects, we're at www.4objects.com. We do have an Instagram page, even though we're both a bit allergic to social. We're embracing it to a certain extent, and we do the occasional event and in person fit party or trunk show. So I'd love to invite all the listeners to come join us next time.
Constraints the Podcast receives resource support from the Alan Slate Radio Institute at Toronto Metropolitan University and is co-produced by Louis Moroney and Mihir Corey. Please subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts to automatically be notified when a new episode is posted. Also, follow us on Instagram at constraints_podcast. Constraints the Podcast is brought to you by Hi-Fi Handiwork. Sound advice.